The fluorescent lights of Maywood Fresh Mart cast a harsh glow on the scene unfolding in aisle 7. Diana Hayes, shopping cart half filled with weekend groceries, freezes as Officer Mark Jenkins draws his weapon. The cereal box she was examining slips from her fingers, landing with a soft thud on the polished floor. Hands where I can see them. Jenkins barks, his service weapon aimed directly at her heart. Diana's training kicks immediately. With deliberate surmise, she raises her hands to shoulder height, keeping her movements smooth and non-threatening. 20 years as an FBI agent has prepared her for dangerous situations, but never in her hometown grocery store on a Saturday afternoon. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding," Diana states, her voice remarkably steady despite the thundering of her heart. Her eyes scan the growing audience of shocked shoppers, some clutching their children, others recording with cell phones. Jenkins steps closer, finger hovering near the trigger. "No misunderstanding. I've been watching you. Something's not right here." His words hang in the air between them, heavy with implication. In this moment, Diana sees not just the gun but the psychological weapon aimed at her dignity. The irony isn't lost on her. Decorated FBI agent Diana Hayes, who has taken down organized crime figures and disrupted terror cells, now stands accused of suspicious behavior while picking out breakfast cereal. "Sir, I'm simply shopping for groceries," Diana explains, maintaining eye contact. She knows from experience that breaking eye contact might be interpreted as deception or planning escape. "If you could tell me what seems suspicious, perhaps I can clarify." Jenkins's jaw tightens. "Your movements, the way you've been examining products." Walking slowly, looking around. He shifts his weight forward, the gun unwavering. "Empty your pockets." Slowly. Diana weighs her options. Complying might defuse the situation but surrenders her dignity. Refusing escalates the danger but preserves her rights. The faces of nearby shoppers flash in her peripheral vision. An elderly woman clutching her chest in distress. A young father shielding his daughter's eyes. A teenager surreptitiously recording everything. "Officer Jenkins," she says, reading his nameplate, "I respectfully decline. I've committed no crime, and you've articulated no reasonable suspicion. I'd like to speak with your supervisor." Jenkins's face flushes. "So you know police procedure. Interesting for someone who claims to be just shopping." His emphasis on the last words drips with sarcasm. A middle-aged woman steps forward from the gathering crowd. "Officer, I've been shopping alongside this lady for 15 minutes. She's done nothing wrong." "Ma'am, step back." Jenkins snaps without taking his eyes off Diana. "This is police business." The woman retreats, but her intervention has created a momentary connection between Diana and the bystanders. They're no longer just spectators, they're witnesses. Diana takes a calculated risk. "Officer Jenkins, I understand you're doing your job. But pointing a weapon at an unarmed shopper creates unnecessary danger for everyone here." Her voice remains calm, almost conversational. "There are children present. Let's resolve this professionally." For a moment, uncertainty flickers across Jenkins's face. Diana recognizes the expression. A rookie realizing they might have overcommitted, searching for a face-saving exit. But then his features harden again, pride overriding judgment. "Turn around. Hands behind your back," he orders. "You're being detained for suspicious activity and resisting an officer." Diana doesn't move. "I've resisted nothing. I've answered your questions calmly. What I won't do is surrender my rights as a citizen." She takes a deep breath. "Officer Jenkins, I'd like to make a phone call." "This isn't a negotiation," Jenkins snaps, his knuckles whitening around the grip of his weapon. "No," Diana agrees, her voice gaining a steel edge that 20 years of federal authority has honed. "It's not. It's about proper procedure and responsible use of power. Something I take very seriously in my profession." A new tension fills the air as their standoff deepens. Diana knows she's at a crossroads. The next few moments will determine whether this incident ends with dignity preserved or escalates into something neither of them can control. Diana Hayes didn't become one of the FBI's top agents by accident. Her journey began in the modest neighborhoods on the outskirts of Maywood, North Carolina, where determination was as much a necessity as air. As a child, Diana would sit on her front porch, watching police cruisers patrol the street. Unlike some of her friends who'd run inside at the sight of law enforcement, Diana would wave, fascinated by their purpose and presence. "I'm going to be like them one day," she told her grandmother, but even better. Her path wasn't smooth. Academic excellence earned her scholarships, but there were always those who questioned her place. At Quantico, she outperformed most of her class, setting records on the shooting range that still stand today. Through 20 years with the Bureau, Diana specialized in organized crime and counterterrorism, earning commendations that filled a drawer in her home office. Recently, when the opportunity arose to transfer back to the field office near Maywood, Diana didn't hesitate. Full circle, her director had said during her farewell gathering. From Maywood to the world and back again. Now at 45, Diana Hayes stands at the pinnacle of her career, respected by colleagues, feared by criminals, and trusted by judges who never question her warrants. Her name appears in FBI training materials as a case study in excellence. All these achievements, all this respect, yet none of it is visible to Officer Jenkins as he stares at her over the barrel of his service weapon in the cereal aisle of Maywood Fresh Mart. What Officer Jenkins couldn't know, as he held his weapon on Diana, was the resilience that defined her. The granddaughter of the first black teacher in Maywood County, Diana had inherited both her grandmother's intellect and her unbending resolve. When her high school guidance counselor suggested community college instead of her dream universities, Diana simply worked harder, graduating valedictorian with multiple scholarship offers. The FBI hadn't been any easier to conquer. The first day at Quantico, a fellow trainee had whispered, "Affirmative action case," as she passed. Diana responded by finishing first in marksmanship, second in tactics, and top of her class in federal procedure. When that same trainee struggled with the legal portion of training, Diana stayed up night after night helping him study. He became one of her strongest advocates. In her early field assignments, Diana specialized in undercover work, her ability to read people and adapt to any situation proving invaluable. She infiltrated human trafficking operations in Miami, arms dealers in Chicago, and a white supremacist group in Idaho. The last assignment earning her both a commendation and 3 weeks in the hospital after her cover was compromised. The promotion to the counterterrorism division came after Diana coordinated a multi-agency operation that prevented an attack on a major sports venue. The citation, signed by the director himself, noted her exceptional judgment under pressure and unparalleled ability to synthesize intelligence from disparate sources. Yet for all the professional accomplishments, Diana remained grounded by her personal connections. She mentored young agents, particularly women of color, navigating the complex corridors of federal law enforcement. She volunteered at Maywood's Youth Center during her rare visits home. She called her grandmother every Sunday without fail. Last year, when the position opened in the FBI's Charlotte Field office with jurisdiction over Maywood County, Diana saw it as more than a career move. It was a chance to give back to the community that had shaped her. Moving into her grandmother's old house, renovating it room by room, Diana felt she was rebuilding not just a family home, but a connection to her roots. The morning of the supermarket incident had been ordinary. Diana had spent it replacing bathroom tiles, then realized she needed groceries for the week. She'd thrown on jeans and a sweatshirt, pulled her hair back in a simple ponytail, and headed to Maywood Fresh Mart. Just another Saturday errand before meeting her former high school track coach for lunch. Now, staring down the barrel of Officer Jenkins' gun, Diana draws on every lesson of her remarkable career. Stay calm. Assess options. protect civilians, de-escalate if possible, and when necessary, take decisive action. 20 years of training crystallize into perfect clarity as she prepares her next move. Remember when we stole Mr. Wilson's apples? William Bill Peterson would often ask whenever he and Diana reconnected. They'd laugh about their childhood adventures, two kids from Maywood who dreamed of making a difference. Their paths diverged after high school graduation. Diana left for college on a full scholarship, while Bill joined the Maywood Police Academy. But their friendship endured through handwritten letters, then emails, then quick texts checking in. Still fighting the good fight became their shared greeting. Bill rose through the ranks with the same steady determination that characterized his basketball playing days when he and Diana dominated the school court. Now, as chief of the Maywood Police Department, Bill Peterson had transformed a small-town force into a model of progressive policing, emphasizing community connection over confrontation. Their professional lives intersected occasionally. A joint task force here, a federal consult there. Law enforcement colleagues often remarked on their unusual friendship, how the FBI agent and the police chief spoke in half sentences, finishing each other's thoughts. Just last month, they'd met for coffee at Maywood's only decent cafe. "I've got some rookies who could learn a thing or two from you," Bill had said. "Come speak at our training day next month." Diana had agreed immediately. "I'll tell them stories about their boss and his misspent youth." Neither could have imagined that their next meeting would happen with a gun drawn in a supermarket aisle, or that one of Bill's officers would be holding that weapon. The friendship between Diana Hayes and Bill Peterson defied simple explanation. They were, in many ways, unlikely allies. Diana, the granddaughter of educators who pushed her toward intellectual pursuits. Bill, the son of the town mechanic who learned to fix engines before he learned algebra. Diana, who left Maywood determined never to look back. Bill, who never seriously considered leaving. Yet something deeper connected them, a shared sense of justice forged in childhood observations of their small town's complexities. They'd witnessed the same inequities growing up, had the same arguments with adults who defended the way things are, and ultimately made the same commitment to change things from within the system. Their legendary status in Maywood began in 10th grade, when they co-wrote an editorial for the school paper about discriminatory discipline practices. The principal had threatened to suspend them both until Diana's grandmother and Bill's father showed up together at the school board meeting. The policy was reviewed and eventually changed. Two teenagers learned the power of standing together for what's right. Over the decades, they'd supported each other through professional challenges and personal losses. When Diana's grandmother passed 5 years ago, Bill drove 4 hours to be at the funeral, arriving in uniform directly from a shift. When Bill's marriage ended after his promotion to chief, Diana flew in for a weekend of fishing and not talking about it, exactly what he needed. Their most significant professional collaboration came 3 years ago, when a series of threats targeted Maywood's annual Heritage Festival. Diana's counterterrorism expertise proved crucial in identifying the source, a former resident with grievances against the town council. Working side by side for 72 sleepless hours, they prevented what could have been a tragedy and strengthened a partnership decades in the making. Last Christmas, when Diana announced her transfer back to the area, Bill had hosted a small welcome home gathering. "Maywood's prodigal daughter returns," he teased, raising a glass in her direction. "The town will never be the same." "That's the point," she'd responded with a smile. "We've got work to do." They planned to meet tomorrow for their standing Sunday morning racquetball game, where they maintained a running tally of wins and losses dating back to their 20s. Diana was ahead by 3 games, a fact she never failed to mention. Instead, they would meet in aisle 7 of Maywood Fresh Mart, with a drawn weapon between them, a moment that would test their friendship and the institutions they both served in ways neither could have anticipated. 15 minutes earlier, Diana had been thinking about nothing more urgent than whether to try a new breakfast cereal. dressed in worn jeans, sneakers, and a light jacket, her off-duty uniform. She blended perfectly with the Saturday shoppers filling Maywood Fresh Mart. Officer Mark Jenkins had been patrolling the store as part of the department's Community Presence Initiative. Fresh out of the academy and only 11 months on the force, Jenkins carried himself with the exaggerated authority of someone still unsure of their place. Jenkins first noticed Diana in the produce section. Something about her caught his attention. The careful way she examined each apple before selecting it, perhaps, or the deliberate pace of her shopping. He began to follow at a distance, watching as she consulted her shopping list. By the time Diana reached the cereal aisle, Jenkins had constructed an entire narrative about her in his mind. When she paused to compare nutritional labels, pulling out her reading glasses, his suspicion crystallized into certainty. "Excuse me, ma'am," Jenkins called out, his hand already resting on his holster. "What are you doing in this store?" Diana looked up, momentarily confused by the question. "Shopping," she answered simply, gesturing to her half-filled cart. "You've been wandering these aisles for quite some time," Jenkins continued, stepping closer. "Are you looking for something specific?" "Just groceries," Diana replied, her instincts now on alert. She recognized the tension in his posture, the fixed stare, the hand hovering near his weapon. "I'm going to need to see some identification," Jenkins demanded, his voice rising enough to attract attention from nearby shoppers. "May I ask why?" Diana questioned calmly. "I'm simply buying groceries. Is there a problem?" The reasonable question seemed to inflame Jenkins. "The problem is you're not cooperating with a police officer," he snapped. "Empty your pockets. Now." Diana straightened her spine, years of training taking over. "Officer, I believe you need reasonable suspicion to make that request. I've done nothing wrong." Jenkins's face flushed. "So you're refusing a direct order?" "I'm asserting my rights as a citizen," Diana corrected, her voice level. "Perhaps we should call your supervisor to clarify the situation." That was when Jenkins drew his weapon, the movement fluid from countless practice drills. "Hands where I can see them," he shouted, loud enough to echo through the store. "Do it now." What Officer Jenkins couldn't see, what he never bothered to look for, were the details that might have given him pause. The way Diana positioned herself to protect nearby shoppers when he approached. The professional assessment in her eyes as she evaluated the tactical situation. The subtle shift in her stance that any trained law enforcement officer might recognize as the posture of a colleague. Jenkins saw only what his preconceptions allowed him to see. As Diana held her hands carefully at shoulder height, she noticed a young mother with a toddler frozen in fear at the end of the aisle. With the slightest movement of her eyes, Diana signaled for them to move away. The woman understood immediately, quietly retreating with her child. 3 more shoppers stood transfixed near the adjacent aisle. Diana could see one man reaching for his phone, likely to call 911. Another had already begun recording the confrontation. The store manager hovered uncertainly in the background, walkie-talkie in hand. Every second the standoff continued increased the danger to everyone present. Diana knew the statistics all too well. How quickly these situations could escalate, how easily bystanders could be harmed. She needed to defuse this before someone got hurt. "Officer Jenkins," she tried again, using his name deliberately to establish connection. "I understand you're concerned. But drawing your weapon in a crowded store creates unnecessary risk." Her voice remained steady, non-threatening. "I'm willing to answer your questions, but let's do this safely." Jenkins's grip on his weapon tightened. "I'll determine what's safe," he snapped. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Diana didn't move. Her FBI training had taught her that compliance wasn't always the safest option. Not when the person giving orders was showing clear signs of poor judgment. Instead, she maintained eye contact, kept her hands visible, and tried a different approach. "Sir, before this goes any further, I should inform you that I'm a federal agent. Jenkins's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. Right. And I'm the FBI director. Turn around. Now. I can prove it, Diana said calmly. My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket. I'd like to reach for them slowly. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jenkins's face, quickly replaced by hardened skepticism. Don't move, he ordered. You expect me to believe you're FBI. In those clothes? Diana recognized the dangerous territory she'd entered. If she reached for her credentials without his explicit permission, Jenkins might perceive a threat. If she continued to defy his orders, the situation would escalate further. In that critical moment, Diana made a decision that would change everything. A decision based on decades of experience, an understanding of human psychology, and her knowledge of one particular person who could end this standoff with a single word. Time slowed in the cereal aisle as Diana assessed her options. 20 years of FBI training had prepared her for hostage situations, armed standoffs, and high-risk arrests, but not for being on the wrong end of a police officer's weapon while shopping for breakfast food. Physical resistance was out of the question. It would only escalate the situation and potentially endanger bystanders now watching in stunned silence. Identifying herself as FBI might startle Jenkins into doing something irreversible. Diana needed to defuse the situation without anyone getting hurt. Officer Jenkins, she said, reading his nameplate, her voice deliberately calm and clear. I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. Would you allow me to call someone who can clear this up? Jenkins tightened his grip on his weapon. No sudden moves. Who exactly do you think you're calling? Chief Peterson, Diana replied, maintaining steady eye contact. Bill Peterson. He and I are old friends. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jenkins's face. Chief Peterson. He repeated, skepticism evident in his voice. That's right, Diana continued. We grew up together here in Maywood. He can verify who I am and why I'm here. Jenkins snorted dismissively. Everyone claims to know the chief when they're in trouble. Then you won't mind if I prove it, Diana challenged. I'm going to reach very slowly for my phone in my right jacket pocket. You can watch every movement. Jenkins hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded sharply. Very slowly. Any sudden moves and… I understand, Diana interrupted, beginning the careful choreography of retrieving her phone while keeping one hand visible. With deliberate movements, she unlocked the screen, accessed her contacts, and pressed the entry labeled Bill Peterson. She put the call on speaker, holding the phone where Jenkins could clearly see it. The store seemed to hold its collective breath as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Hey Dee, came the cheerful voice of Chief Peterson. Don't tell me you're canceling racquetball again tomorrow. Diana never took her eyes off Jenkins as she replied, Bill, I'm at Maywood Fresh Mart. One of your officers, Jenkins, currently has me at gunpoint in the cereal aisle. I thought you might want to know. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. He what? The chief's voice transformed instantly from friendly to furious. Put him on the phone. Now. The color drained from Jenkins's face as the reality of his situation began to dawn on him. Diana held the phone toward him, her expression unreadable. Officer Jenkins? The chief's voice cut through the silence. Is your weapon drawn in my store? Sir, Jenkins began, his voice suddenly unsteady. Don't move a muscle. Chief Peterson cut him off. If that gun isn't holstered by the time I walk through those doors, you'll be turning in your badge before dinner. I'm 3 minutes away. As the call ended, Jenkins stared at Diana with new eyes. Not seeing an FBI agent, not seeing a friend of his boss, but seeing the enormity of his mistake taking shape before him. His arm lowered slightly, uncertainty replacing his previous conviction. You really know the chief, he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. I tried to tell you, Diana replied, maintaining her composure despite the surge of relief flowing through her. Bill and I have known each other since elementary school. Basketball team, debate club, senior prom, we have history. Jenkins's hand trembled visibly now, his finger moving away from the trigger. Around them, shoppers who had been frozen in shock began to murmur. Someone clapped. A teenager's voice called out, "That was badass, lady." Diana kept her focus entirely on Jenkins, watching as his confidence crumbled. "You should probably holster your weapon," she suggested, her tone professional rather than gloating. The chief meant what he said about 3 minutes. Jenkins slowly lowered his gun, the movement opposite of his earlier fluid draw, now hesitant, almost shameful. As he secured it in his holster, his eyes darted between Diana and the store entrance. "I didn't know," he muttered more to himself than to her. "How was I supposed to know?" "That's the point, Officer Jenkins," Diana replied, finally lowering her hands. "You weren't supposed to need to know who I am to treat me with basic dignity and respect." The sound of approaching sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Jenkins's face paled further as he realized the cavalry wasn't just coming. It was already here. Diana straightened her jacket, picked up her fallen cereal box, and placed it carefully in her cart. "I believe Chief Peterson would like a word with you," she said simply, nodding toward the front of the store where a police cruiser had just screeched to a halt. "Officer Jenkins?" The chief's voice cut through the silence. "Is your weapon drawn in my store?" "Sir," Jenkins began, his voice suddenly unsteady. "Don't move a muscle," Chief Peterson cut him off. "I'm 3 minutes away. If that gun isn't holstered by the time I walk through those doors, you'll be turning in your badge before dinner." As the call ended, Jenkins stared at Diana with new eyes. Not seeing an FBI agent, not seeing a friend of his boss, but seeing the enormity of his mistake taking shape before him. The automatic doors of Maywood Fresh Mart slid open with a gentle hiss that belied the storm about to enter. Chief William Peterson strode into the store, not in uniform but unmistakably in command. His weekend clothes, jeans, and a Maywood High sweatshirt couldn't diminish the authority radiating from him. Store manager Tina Martinez rushed to intercept him. "Chief Peterson, thank goodness. It's in aisle 7. I know." Peterson cut her off, his pace never slowing. "Call dispatch. Tell them to send 2 senior officers, not trainees, veterans." Shoppers who had been nervously lingering parted before him. Some pointed toward the cereal aisle. Others simply watched in tense anticipation. The chief's reputation in Maywood preceded him, fair but uncompromising, especially with his own officers. When Peterson turned into aisle 7, the tableau before him froze his blood. Diana Hayes, his childhood friend, basketball teammate, confidant, stood with her hands raised. Across from her, Officer Jenkins still had his weapon drawn, though his posture had changed from aggressive to uncertain. "Jenkins." Peterson's voice cracked like a whip across the aisle. "Holster that weapon now." Jenkins startled as if waking from a trance. "Chief, I was just—" "That wasn't a suggestion, officer," Peterson interrupted, closing the distance between them with purposeful strides. "Secure your weapon before someone gets hurt." As Jenkins fumbled his gun back into its holster, Peterson turned to Diana. 20 years of friendship allowed him to read the controlled fury behind her composed expression. "Dee," he said, his voice softening. "Are you all right?" Diana lowered her hands slowly. "Physically, yes," she answered, her eyes never leaving Jenkins. "Professionally offended, absolutely." Peterson nodded, understanding everything she wasn't saying in that moment. He turned back to Jenkins, who now stood at rigid attention, his face a mask of dawning horror. "Officer Jenkins," Peterson's voice returned to steel. "Do you realize who you've been holding at gunpoint for the last 10 minutes? Jenkins swallowed visibly. "Sir," she was acting suspicious and— "This is Special Agent Diana Hayes, Federal Bureau of Investigation," Peterson interrupted. 20 years federal service. Counter-terrorism specialist. Presidential commendation recipient. With each credential, Jenkins seemed to shrink further. And more relevant to your immediate future, she's been my friend since we were 5 years old. The arriving senior officers entered the aisle, taking in the scene with practiced efficiency. Rodriguez, Michaels, Peterson addressed them without turning. Escort Officer Jenkins to the station. Secure his weapon and badge. I want him in my office in 30 minutes. As Jenkins was led away, Peterson turned back to Diana. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. This isn't what I want our department to be. Diana finally allowed herself to exhale fully. I know, Bill. That's why we need to talk about what happens next. As the crowd began to disperse, Peterson insisted on staying with Diana while she finished her shopping. The normalcy of discussing bread choices and comparing pasta brands provided a necessary counterbalance to the intensity of the preceding moments. Neither mentioned Jenkins as they moved through the store, but both knew the conversation to come would be significant. At the checkout line, the cashier, a teenager with wide eyes, kept glancing between Diana and the chief. Are you really FBI? She finally blurted out. Diana smiled, her first genuine smile since entering the store. Yes, I am. That is so cool, the girl whispered, bagging Diana's groceries with newfound reverence. Outside in the parking lot, Peterson helped load the groceries into Diana's car. As she closed the trunk, he leaned against the vehicle, his expression turning serious. This isn't just about Jenkins, he said quietly. This is systemic. I recruited him, trained him, supervised him. Diana studied her old friend's face, seeing the weight of responsibility he carried. Bill, you can't personally screen every thought in every officer's head. No, he agreed, but I can create systems that identify problems before they become incidents. Before someone without your training and connections faces what you face today. He straightened up, decision made. I need your help, Doy. Professional help, not just friend help. Diana nodded slowly. You're thinking review and reform. Complete overhaul, Peterson corrected. Starting with Jenkins, but not ending there. Will you help? Diana extended her hand, a gesture reminiscent of their high school basketball days before each game. Partners? Peterson clasped her hand firmly. Partners. As Diana drove home, groceries in her trunk, and the incident already transforming from immediate threat to future case study, she reflected on the irony. How her worst experience, since returning to Maywood, might ultimately make it a better place. Her phone buzzed with a text from Peterson. My office, 7 a.m. tomorrow. Bringing coffee and pastries. We've got work to do. Diana smiled grimly. Justice wasn't just about punishing Jenkins. It was about ensuring there wouldn't be another Jenkins. And that work was just beginning. The Internal Affairs conference room at Maywood Police Department headquarters had never seemed so small. Detective Sarah Okafor, a 15-year veteran who headed the IA division, reviewed her notes one final time before looking up at the assembled group. The evidence in this case is overwhelming, she began, her Nigerian accent becoming more pronounced as it always did during important presentations. We have multiple witness statements, all consistent. Store security footage from 7 different angles. Officer body camera footage, which Officer Jenkins failed to deactivate despite department policy requiring it remain on. Chief Peterson nodded slightly. And Special Agent Hayes' statement? Received this morning, Detective Okafor replied, holding up a sealed envelope. Detailed, factual, and damning. The disciplinary board, consisting of Chief Peterson, Detective Okafor, Deputy Chief Rodriguez, and Civilian Oversight Representative Dr. James Washington, exchanged glances. The mood was somber. No one took pleasure in these proceedings, even when the facts were clear-cut. Bring him in, Peterson instructed. Officer Mark Jenkins entered, accompanied by his union representative. Gone was the swagger of his patrol days, replaced by the pallor of someone who hasn't slept in days. He took the seat indicated, hands trembling slightly. "Officer Jenkins," Chief Peterson began formally. "This board has reviewed the evidence regarding your encounter with Special Agent Diana Hayes at Maywood Fresh Mart 4 days ago. Before we proceed, do you wish to make any statement?" Jenkins cleared his throat nervously. "I want to apologize for my actions. I misread the situation and—" Actually, Detective Okafor interrupted. "The security footage shows quite clearly that there was no situation to misread. Agent Hayes was shopping. Nothing more." Jenkins's union rep leaned forward. "My client acknowledges his error in judgment. As a young officer still in his probationary period, he was overzealous in his approach to community policing." Dr. Washington, the civilian oversight representative, removed his glasses. "Overzealous. Drawing a weapon on an unarmed shopper goes well beyond overzealous. What specifically made you approach Agent Hayes in the first place?" The question hung in the air. Jenkins stared at the table, unable or unwilling to articulate his reasoning. "The video evidence speaks volumes," Deputy Chief Rodriguez noted. "In the 30 minutes prior to the incident, you observed but did not approach 17 other shoppers, most of whom exhibited similar shopping behaviors." Jenkins had no response. Chief Peterson folded his hands. "Officer Jenkins, this board has determined that your actions constituted a severe violation of department policy, including unnecessary escalation, improper weapon deployment, and failure to follow basic engagement protocols. Your employment with the Maywood Police Department is terminated, effective immediately." Jenkins's face crumpled, but there was no surprise there. Only the confirmation of what he'd known was coming. "Furthermore," Peterson continued, "this board is referring the matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges of aggravated assault. Agent Hayes has not yet indicated whether she intends to pursue civil action." As Jenkins was escorted out, the weight of consequences settling heavily on his shoulders, Chief Peterson remained seated, staring at the personnel file before him. "Bill," Detective Okafor said quietly when they were alone, "this isn't on you, isn't it?" Peterson replied, "He was wearing my department's badge, using authority I granted him." He closed the file decisively. "This isn't the end of it. Not by a long shot." 3 days later, Diana sat across from Chief Peterson in his office as he slid a thick folder across the desk. "The full internal investigation," he explained. "I want you to have it for your records." Diana opened the file, scanning the conclusions. "Termination, police certification revoked, referral to the DA." She looked up. "The DA is pressing charges." Peterson nodded. "Aggravated assault. Jenkins will likely plead down, but there will be legal consequences beyond losing his job." He hesitated. "There's something else you should see." He handed her a separate document. Jenkins's original application to the police academy. Diana read carefully through the psychological evaluation, stopping at a particular section. Previous applications to other departments, rejected twice. She looked up sharply. Orlando PD and Atlanta PD both flagged concerns about his temperament. "He didn't disclose those rejections," Peterson confirmed. "Our background check missed it. He was granted a waiver based on our staffing shortages." Diana set the papers down carefully. "Systemic failure." "Exactly," Peterson agreed. "One bad officer is a problem. A system that recruits, trains, and deploys that officer is a crisis." Diana turned to the implementation plan they'd been developing. "Your reform proposal goes to the City Council next week." Peterson nodded. "Our case makes the argument for them. Independent review board, enhanced psychological screening, body cameras with automatic uploading rather than officer-controlled footage." He trailed off, looking tired but determined. "It's just the beginning." Diana considered the magnitude of what they were undertaking. "You know this will be difficult. There will be resistance." "Count on it," Peterson agreed. The union's already pushing back. Some veteran officers feel threatened. The budget committee is questioning costs. And yet here you are, Diana observed, risking your career to get this right. Peterson shrugged slightly. What happened to you in that grocery store shouldn't happen to anyone. But it does, every day, somewhere in this country. I can't fix everywhere. But you can fix Maywood, Diana finished for him. With your help, he amended. The FBI perspective gives this legitimacy beyond just me pushing reform. Diana smiled slightly. Partners, remember? Partners, Peterson confirmed, relief evident in his voice. Now let's fix this thing. Dusk settled over Maywood Park as Diana Hayes sat on a bench overlooking the basketball court where she and Bill had spent countless childhood hours. The familiar squeak of sneakers and thump of a ball against asphalt provided a soothing soundtrack to her thoughts. Still come here to think, huh? Bill Peterson's voice broke through her reverie as he approached, carrying 2 coffee cups. Diana accepted the offered drink with a small smile. Some habits never change. Bill settled beside her on the bench, watching the teenagers playing a pickup game. For a few minutes, they sat in comfortable silence. The kind only possible between people who've known each other for decades. Jenkins's termination made the regional papers, Diana finally said. Your quote was good, Bill shrugged. Yours was better. Justice isn't about making examples, it's about setting standards. Mom always did say I should have been a writer instead of carrying a gun, Diana replied with a hint of humor. Another silence fell between them, heavier this time. You know, Bill finally continued, I've been chief for 7 years. Thought I was building something solid. Then in 3 minutes, one officer undoes years of community work. Diana turned to face her old friend. This isn't just about Jenkins, Bill. It's about systems. I know, he nodded. That's why I called you here. He handed her a folder he'd been carrying. I've drafted a complete overhaul of our recruitment, training, and oversight processes. I'd like the FBI's resident expert to review it. Diana raised an eyebrow as she accepted the folder. You mean your childhood friend who happens to be FBI? I mean the best investigator I know who just experienced firsthand what happens when these systems fail, Bill corrected. You've always been honest with me, Dee. Don't stop now. Diana opened the folder, scanning the contents. Her expression grew increasingly impressed as she read. Community involvement in hiring panels, expanded psychological screening, implicit bias training with measured outcomes, independent review board. She looked up. This is comprehensive. It has to be, Bill replied simply. What happened to you in that store should never happen to anyone. But it does, every day, somewhere in this country. I can't fix everywhere, but I can damn well fix Maywood. Diana closed the folder. These changes won't be easy. You'll get pushback. Counting on it, Bill said, determination hardening his features. Sometimes you need to shake the tree to see which branches are rotten. As the last light faded from the sky, Diana found herself thinking about the cereal aisle, the cold fear of having a gun pointed at her chest, the humiliation of being viewed as inherently suspicious. But alongside those dark thoughts came something unexpected. Hope. You know what's strange? She said softly. In 20 years with the Bureau, I've faced down armed suspects, terrorist threats, organized crime. But it took a rookie cop in my hometown grocery store to show me where the real work still needs to be done. Bill nodded slowly. So, are you in? Will you help? Diana extended her hand, the gesture reminiscent of their childhood basketball team ritual. Partners. Bill's hand clasped hers firmly. Partners. 3 months later, Diana stood at the podium in the Maywood Police Department's newly renovated training center. Before her sat 25 officers, some rookies, some veterans, all part of the department's first enhanced training program under the new reforms. My name is Special Agent Diana Hayes, she began. Some of you know me as Chief Peterson's friend, others as the FBI agent from the incident at Maywood Fresh Mart. A few uncomfortable shifts in the audience. But today, I'm here as someone who believes that what happened to me can help transform this department into a national model. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. A still image from the store security camera showing Officer Jenkins with his weapon drawn as she stood with her hands raised. This moment could have ended tragically, she continued. Instead, we're turning it into a catalyst for change. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll examine decision points, implicit biases, de-escalation techniques, and community engagement strategies. This isn't about shame or blame. It's about growth. From the back of the room, Chief Peterson watched with pride as Diana commanded the attention of every officer present. The reforms were taking root. Jenkins had pleaded guilty to reduced charges and was serving community service. More importantly, application screening protocols had already identified and rejected 2 candidates with concerning psychological profiles. After the session, as officers filed out, many stopped to thank Diana or ask questions. One veteran sergeant lingered until the room was nearly empty. "Agent Hayes," he said quietly, "I've been on the force 22 years. What happened to you? It made me question things I've been doing on autopilot. I just wanted to say thank you for not giving up on us." Diana nodded, understanding the courage it took for him to say this. "The moment we stop questioning is the moment we stop growing, Sergeant." Outside in the hallway, Bill waited with 2 cups of coffee. "How'd it go?" Diana accepted the cup gratefully. "Good. Really good. They're listening." "That's because you're speaking their language," Bill replied. "Cop to cop, not outsider to cop." Diana smiled. "Partner to partner." As they walked down the corridor together, past the wall where the department's new mission statement hung proudly. "Protect with respect, serve with integrity," Diana felt a sense of completion. The circle that began with terror in a grocery store aisle was transforming into something powerful and positive. Proof that sometimes it takes breaking a system to rebuild it stronger. The incident would always be part of her story, but it wouldn't be the end of it. Instead, it had become the beginning of something much more important. Lasting change that would protect others long after both she and Bill had retired from their respective badges. As they walked away from the park, Diana glanced back at the teenagers, still playing under the lights, oblivious to the small moment of history that had just unfolded. Perhaps one day they would shop for cereal without fear, drive without anxiety, live without constantly having to prove they belonged. It wouldn't happen overnight. But in Maywood, at least, it would begin tomorrow. All I want, Bill. For the next person who looks like me shopping for cereal on a Saturday afternoon to be seen as just another citizen, not a suspect. The story of FBI agent Diana Hayes becomes a powerful example within law enforcement circles. A stark reminder of the persistence of bias and the critical importance of accountability. Through her dignity in the face of discrimination and her advocacy for systemic change, Diana transforms her personal humiliation into a catalyst for progress, ensuring that justice extends beyond her individual case to protect the community she has always sought to serve. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.